We are listening to the sound of Philadelphia, McFadden and Whitehead. Philadelphia was the city of birth for Muhammad Ali Nassardeen, a brother who, as of tomorrow, October the 11th, has been gone from what we know of life for 10 years. So today's show is dedicated to his memory, and it's a retrospective as well in terms of something that he put his whole life into. Back in 1988, Muhammad worked at Centinela Hospital, and he had, quote-unquote, a good job. And he was starting a family, and it kind of got to him every time he would go somewhere and hear people, well, particularly in the hospital where he worked at, he would hear doctors and nurses and whatnot complain about having went to a black business and had a terrible experience. So it ate at him till he finally acted upon something that he believed needed to happen, and that was the formation of an organization that specialized in servicing the core needs of the black community with respect to business development and entrepreneurship. So what he did was he started an organization called Recycling Black Dollars. Sitting to my left is a gentleman who actually knew Muhammad before I ever even came to Los Angeles. I was living in San Diego when the organization started. Gary Washington, welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Bobby, for having me on your show.
I would see Gary, amongst other things, he has two passions. One is fed him well enough to have traveled the world many times, and that is his real estate interests and his love of live jazz music. And he has produced several events. Most recently, he has dedicated a lot of his time and attention to the preservation of the form of music that we refer to as jazz. So come right on in, Crystal. Oh, yeah, we just get down like this at Uncle Bobby's Country Corner. Yeah.
Okie dokie.
Yeah. Grab yourself a seat there.
Hello, audience.
Plug on in. Yeah. So we just started, and I opened the show with one of Muhammad's favorite songs, McFadden and Whitehead, Ain't No Stopping Us Now.
Oh, okay.
And that brother's energy level was something, man, because he thrived on making things happen. And being a native of Philadelphia, it was easy for him to find the pocket on that. And we were all big fans of music. But back to how you met Muhammad, and like I said, by the time I got to Los Angeles, your office was right down from Muhammad's, you know. And why did you become a part of the phenomenon that became Recycling Black Dollars?
It was different. At that time, in the city of Los Angeles and surrounding areas, we had nothing of its kind. I'm in business at the time myself. Matter of fact, my real estate office was in the same building that where he was located as well. Well, we just started talking, in and out of the building. Periodically, we would talk about business. We would talk about just various things. And then he introduced me to his idea, Recycling Black Dollars. And I thought that was a very catchy phrase, but I wasn't still quite sure just what was going to happen with Recycling Black Dollars, meaning that we have seen so many startup thoughts come out, but nothing sustained itself. And so I decided to get involved with Muhammad after we talked a number of times, and he told me what it was all about. And I just started recruiting other small business folk to consider becoming a part of his idea. And it grew. It grew. And I mean, my love for him, for doing that, grew as well. Because even though I was not the initiator of it, I was feeling the same thing he was feeling. So that created the passion that I, to this day, have in my own operations, businesses, and things like that. But he started the conversation where lay people who had small business throughout the city and surrounding areas could come and do what you actually pay for right now with advertisements. Okay, that was a platform to say, here's what I do, here's how I do it. And so the whole network thing just started to blossom. So, hey, it's been a beautiful thing. And you know, to see you doing this now, 10 years later, I think we can do it, maybe tweaked in a different way, but the overall idea is still here. How do we engage others who feel the same way about it to push this along, okay? Because it's here.
Well, that's a wonderful segue to introduce my other guest here today, Miss Crystal Mitchell. If I recall correctly, I would see you coming in and out of the office due to your association with the late Willie Fan, who took over RBD after Muhammad had passed away. And that went on, I guess, for maybe 2 or 3 years, where you was, more and more, prevalent in the mix of things that was going on at Recycling Black Dollars. And as we fast forward to 2017, your role in Recycling Black Dollars has expanded exponentially. So if you would kind of explain how you got involved in Recycling Black Dollars and what your current role is today in Recycling Black Dollars.
I got involved, again, because of Willie Fan. He and I had an affiliation. We skied at the same ski club. And so he also prepared taxes. And I do bookkeeping and accounting. And I'm an accountant, not a CPA, but an accountant. And so he would reach out to me to help his clients get their books in order before he processed their taxes. And so that was the beginning of the relationship. And then after he became the executive director of Recycling Black Dollars, he then brought me in to do the accounting for Recycling Black Dollars, and as well as once I got there, to bring them kind of current in the social media, on their social media platform. I set up their Facebook pages and a YouTube channel and Twitter and everything that needed, LinkedIn. But what really turned the corner, I guess, for me, because part of my practice is always being, when you ask someone if about a black business, you first got, well, they don't do their businesses correctly, or I don't know where they are, or, they, whatever, the reviews were usually pretty bad, right? So my thought was, first of all, that's not true. Secondly, the ones that you have encountered that you feel are, as Mr. Leon Garr says, your ice is not colder, or your ice is colder than mine. Mm-hmm. Then let me make sure that our business's ice is extremely cold. And so then so that's kind of what Willie and I were doing. So then we remember when Muhammad, he was instrumental in the Miller Coors contest.
Sure.
And that was pretty my first real interjection in it on that level. The businesses was coming in, submitting their business plans, and their financials just were not up to par. And then I recognized that maybe the problem was they didn't really know how to put together a business plan, and maybe there were some gaps in how to run a business. So we kind of reformulated that. I started teaching classes over there. And so that when we did our submissions, then they were top drawer. And then as it came along, I was doing workshops and classes to bring our businesses to that level where you can't find an excuse why you can't recycle your dollars with another black business. And then when Willie passed on, we were trying to find a executive director. And a couple of people said, well, you and Jackie seem to be doing okay, so why farm this out? And that's kind of how I became the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, along with Jackie B.
And as I look back and think back about engagement with Recycling Black Dollars, I was living in San Diego when the organization was formed in 1988. And I had family here in Los Angeles, and they kept telling me, they said, there's this thing happening in Inglewood over at Joshua's, which was a fabulous nightclub, dining area, what have you. On Tuesday nights, man, the energy is just incredible. And so I drove up and I went over with my cousin, and it took us 10 minutes to park. I mean, the place was just crawling with well-dressed, high-energy black folks. And then Muhammad stepped out there on the stage with that high energy that he had, and they went through the ritual of interaction about business. And I had never seen anything like that in a collective sense. And to hear about this type of business and that type of business and this type of service and that type of restaurant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they had a little emblem in the window. The Recycling Black Dollars emblem. And he talked about, the purpose of membership. And then as I began to spend more and more time in Los Angeles, and I'd ride around and I'd see that emblem, and I'm like, man, this is serious, man. And it was almost like being at a revival every Tuesday night, man. I mean, the energy level would be so high, and people, for the first time, were taking black business seriously. And he had the data, but more importantly, he had the passion. And then when I found the backstory was that, here was a brother who stuck his neck out. He had a good job, and he didn't have to do that. And that was a tremendous social and economic cost for assuming responsibility for the elevation of the economic plight of black people, particularly in Southern California. And I said, man, this is really something. And then I met a gentleman in 1989 by the name of Harry Pickens, and he talked me into doing the Black Economic Success event in San Diego. And now all of a sudden I got all these people. It's like, what next? And I talked to Muhammad on the phone. I said, man, what would it take to start a chapter in San Diego? And he said, I'm telling you, man, it ain't no piece of work, man, dealing with us on a daily basis. And I found out how true that was. But it just, created that relationship between Muhammad and I admired his tenacity and his unbelievable commitment to what he was into. And I liken it to Marcus Garvey and Booker T. Washington and so many others that just made that commitment to business, but not in just for business sake, but understanding how important it was for us to use our dollars collectively. And he would often say, whenever you can, put a dollar in another black hand. And we were actually practicing that to a degree. My next question to both of you is this. What is it about us that precludes us from being more participatory in the economics that we do every day? We make transactions every day. So I'm just going to throw that out there to you first and then to Crystal. What keeps us from embracing a concept like recycling black dollars nationally?
I don't know the answer to that question, okay, in an absolute type of way. And I'm going to answer it from the standpoint that trust has always been a major issue with us as a people, okay. I lived through much of the civil rights era, okay, when we did things to get our voices heard. We created a lot of organizations that were for the benefit of our people, black people. We were, or a few people were given an opportunity to represent black folks in our area, especially here, i.e. in the Los Angeles area. And we were coming together for the most part, which was a golden opportunity for something like Muhammad was doing with recycling black dollars. But of course, he wasn't around. I think his concept was around, but the government gave a few people an opportunity to make some money to exploit the rest of us. Okay? And as a result of that, some of these men and women made their money through the war on poverty programs. They got their positions with the various government entities, and they ceased to show the commitment that they once had when we were all struggling to get our seat at the table. All right? Now, having said that, that was more, in my opinion, that was more of a we generation of people, as opposed to today, it's more of a me generation of people. You do your thing, I do my thing. Okay? And I think in some circles it created a lot of dissension. Okay? Again, I'm not quite, and I think I believe what I'm saying is just across all state lines with us. Okay, it's just, I've been in business for 32 years in real estate business as a broker, my own business. But there's a line drawn there, baby, in terms of who will work with you, who will deal with you within our community.
Nationwide.
Within our community, brother. You see, so again, it's more of a suggestion, and it's more of how I perceive the development of where we are today and why we don't get involved like we should. We have people here in the local area, per capita income is very high, but they don't spend their dollars in much of the areas around them. Okay, just don't do it for various reasons. Okay, and also we have to be able to offer something too. Okay,
Catch-22.
That's the other part, Yeah. So, in the spirit of your question, that's what I believe.
That was pretty, depth of you to do that way. I'm gonna cut to the chase in a minute.
So, obviously, it's 10 years later, and we're still talking and recycling Black dollars. And in fact, it's kind of funny because this morning we had a breakfast mixer, and we had Cherie Franklin in talking about the cannabis industry, and we had about 45, 50 people, which is on an average what we have at a breakfast mixer. But what I know for me, the way I do business is I'm very collaborative. I don't do business unless I'm doing business with other people and that they look like me. And when I operate in a network type of environment, because all of my business for my own business has been word of mouth. So I make sure that the people in my circle understand that. And if I'm going to refer someone out to you, then you're going to have to refer someone back to me, and we're going to have to keep that circle going around. And if I introduce you to somebody, I am going to follow up to make sure you are following up. So that's something that we've been doing now at RBD, is don't just come here and give us your 30-second commercial and leave out this door and don't do anything else about that. When you come back here, or I need to hear that there's been some exchanges going on with our businesses. So we're getting the concept. I do think at this point where we are right now with what's going on in the world, we need to reach back down to our younger people. They got the concept. They got the idea. They just got to know, where do I find these businesses? But we also, as you said, we do have to help them create those innovative businesses that can meet our needs. Last week, there was someone that came on my Facebook. They were doing a Facebook Live, and they wanted to call a boycott for the One United gas station on the corner of La Brea and Slauson. And so they were calling everybody to boycott the station because they weren't hiring black people. Well, the Chevron across the street doesn't, the Arco down the street doesn't, and the Shell doesn't. So if we're going to boycott, let's make sure we have a strategic purpose for doing that. So gas is a commodity that you need every day to put in your car. So if we boycott them, what's the alternative? Let's not just do things senselessly without a purpose. And also know the history. So I don't know if you guys know the history of the gas stations after the riots. They actually put black business owners in place, Shell did. And then about 10 years later, they figured that, hey, we done our part for the community, and we're pulling out now. So what they did was they said, we need these business owners to have multiple stations, and multiple meaning 10 or more. And the start in is $600,000 a piece. Well, what did that do to the two people that were out there? They had 4, but now where do we get? We got to come back in and buy our stations back over again in 600. So we have to understand that if we don't work collectively, we can't make these kind of things happen.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned gas. It's 2 things you got to have every day: food and gas. There's some other essentials as well. But there was a time when I first came to Los Angeles in the 80s, there were a number of black-owned gas stations, as well as, well, not so many grocery stores, at least, large stores, but there were at least more evidence of that. And here we are in 2017, and for whatever reasons, and I want to kind of drill into that in a minute, if some of it has to do with our mindset about who's supposed to do what. All right, and the easiest thing to do is to consume. I mean, it don't take anything but some little money to do that, and poor people gonna spend money because they have to every day. And we haven't done a real good job of aligning ourselves with the needs of the community in that regard, because leverage is something that Muhammad and I talked about a lot. And one of the things that I did, and I guess in the next segment, is an embodiment of the importance of having a family, if not a community, understand what it means to own a business outright, and then have the ability to expand the services that you can offer a community. The construction industry, we live in a town where everywhere you look, they're either tearing something down or building something up. What's missing?
Us.
I mean, you need a pair of high-power binoculars to find a brother on a construction site these days.
Right.
And the responsibility of self-determination is something that's unavoidable, because as we sit here today and talking about the legacy of recycling black dollars, there's been so many organizations started since then. Most prominently has been Black Lives Matter. And I've run into some interference when I kind of just look at people funny when they say Black Lives Matter. You got to put a T-shirt on and tell somebody that your life matters. Your life really doesn't matter,
right?
You know, and the economics of it is still not a front burner issue in our community. And I'm going to ask you guys, from the vantage point that you have, how much sense does it make to expend the kind of energy we've seen expended the last month or so debating the virtues of whether to sit or stand during the playing of a bogus national anthem?
Well, you and I both know it's all about economics, right? So Sunday, when the Cowboys owner said, if you decide you're going to take a knee, then you can sit on the bench. What would have happened if all of those black players, because how many white players are on the football team?
It's over 70% black.
70%. So 70% sat down, said we're not playing. So what they gonna do? Are they gonna continue on with the game without those 70% of the black players? If across the whole, everything that took place on Sunday, all the games from 12 o'clock in the morning to whenever they stopped playing, what would have happened? They would have heard you, right? So when we're afraid. We have been so pushed down, and I see it when I talk to my business owners. And I'm a big thinker. I'm kind of like a Muhammad, but not probably, because I always say, what would it be like? What would we be right now if Muhammad was still alive today with the resources that we have today, right? But I think big, and so when I start talking about owning but collectively coming together and buying the building that your business is in, and making sure that you can create another stream of income through the rent, then people are looking at me, whoa, Crystal, whoa, settle down, quiet down. And I can see it in their faces like, if we just stay right up here under the radar, they'll leave us alone. We'll be invisible. We are never invisible. Even when we not doing anything, we not invisible.
Well, that's pretty much color coding right there. You might can camouflage over the phone, but it's gonna be kind of hard once they see that nose and them lips. They don't know what's up. So Gary, that's a tough question, but
it's a tough one. It's a tough question. This situation we have with this standing and kneeling in the NFL, it's truly economic. On the other hand, it does represent another area that I probably touched on earlier, is the belief system of these millionaires, these ball players. Okay, so when you start talking about, if we truly believe that this needs to be done, some are standing, some are kneeling. Mm-hmm. It's the mindset. And you're right. If they chose not to play the game, you'd beat them owners up. Okay? But I go back to the mindset of the players. Mm-hmm. When all this first came out, I said, well, where's the union? The union wasn't saying nothing.
Nothing.
Mm-mm.
You understand me?
Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The money, you can't escape it. But then there's also the value component. There was a brother, I can't think of his name right now. He wrote and still does write for the New York Times. He did a book called Millionaire Slaves, and the essence of it is still so prophetic right now that it's something to talk about, because a lot of these guys that are in these high-profile positions right now, because they play for somebody else, it don't matter how much money they make in their own mind, because most of these guys will be broke within 5 years of the completion of their career, and any stoppage of income, any stoppage, puts them in a predicament they don't want to return to, because they came from nothing. And it has to be factored in when we start talking about what's our game plan. All right, it's a mistake to put people out in front that are not equipped for that battle. And then it falls back on us, because in actuality, whether they play or not, if we quit consuming all things NFL, then we're going to have a serious meeting. I mean, because they can replace ball players, all right, very quickly, because they create such a machine that as soon as you put that jersey on, it's about the Green Bay Packers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or whoever. All right, I mean, they forget about folks so fast. Now, Kaepernick drew all the attention to this. He ain't even playing. All right, and he may never play again. And it's not like he's gonna be missed, because now they got the spotlight on that boy Deshaun, whatever, playing for Houston.
Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah,
Bad.
that's my friend, a good friend of mine. So that's his son.
Really?
Yeah, I remember Deshaun since he was 6 years old.
Brother can play, so you can be replaced. So the question becomes, how do we position ourselves as a people to the point where we're not with the first blow knocked out? We go with the first blow, boom, we out, and just fight over it,
Well, I think that's kind of what's happening now. The battle is being fought because, one, number 45 is in office, and he has brought all of it to the surface like a volcano, and is about to erupt. And so he has, because of how out there he is, the other races are saying, whoa, wait a minute. And he ain't not just picking on us, they picking on everybody, right? But of course, we can benefit from that. But while all of this chaos is going on, we need to be doing what we need to be doing. Because the focus is, because now you got white people campaigning for everybody's life, right? And all of a sudden seeing, wait a minute, what are you guys doing? And they're talking it. If you're on your social media, I look at the stories and I read the stories, but what I read are the comments. And the comments are more in favor of the fact that, wait a minute, we are the same people. We just got different coats on the outside. And if he's trying to destroy black people, he's trying to destroy women, he's trying to destroy Hispanics and Asians and all of those people to come down to who? One superior race of people. And when that's been done before or tried to be done, and look at the outcome of that. So that's where they're trying to get back to old white guys who run everything and everybody, even with women. This morning they made a comment that if women were obedient, their husbands wouldn't beat them.
I agree with that.
I'll stay out of that. I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna leave that one alone. I don't want.
Or better yet, there was another one I read that if mothers didn't work in public service, the mothers that work in public services are sinners. What?
I don't get that one, man. I don't get that.
Meaning that you have a voice. You're working. You're contributing to the household. So you can't tell me to sit down and shut up because I'm bringing in half of that bread, right?
No, we can tell you. That don't mean you're gonna go for it.
I think part of. I think part of the response to that same question is, see, when white folks started to be affected, the discussion changed.
It changes.
It changed. See, it changed. And the other thing that I think is very important to say here is this. Knowledge has always been key in our community. And at one time it was very high. Okay. And I'm not saying you had to go to college to get it necessarily.
Exactly.
Okay. But it was still something that was very important back in time. Okay. Knowledge. I question that today.
Well, it's a question whether it's knowledge of minutia, because we got so much information out there now that by the time you sift through it, unless you are perceptive, you'll waste a lot of time reading nothing. Okay.
Well, and see, the thing with knowledge is it's not so much you're sitting down reading the newspapers. All those things are what's on social media.
Right.
But I think it's also getting that knowledge from people who are doing things that you want to do.
That's a great point.
Okay.
And on that note right there, we're going to take a short pause and we'll be joined by somebody who is a bridge over troubled waters, in my estimation, because he comes from a lineage that is just, significant and historical in the city of Los Angeles. So we'll be back in a couple of minutes. That's the Mighty OJs, For the Love of Money, and according to OG Porters, I need to stick to talking. That was another song that Muhammad Nassardeen truly loved. We've been joined at the desk by a brother who I've grown to know and respect and love because he's a part of one of the preeminent families in Los Angeles, headed by a man who's now 103 years old, Mr. Leon Garr, who I had the pleasure of working with on his autobiography, Let's Go to Work. Welcome, Israel Garr, to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
What's up, Uncle Bobby? How you doing? Everybody out there, how y'all doing?
Good, man, good.
How come I've met your whole entire family and I've never seen you?
Probably.
Yeah, he was in the witness protection program.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, I stay in the back,
But not anymore. He paid his dues, and I've spent enough time around him to know why he is in a position now to become a very important figure in the business community of Los Angeles. He has a beautiful family himself. He sat at the feet of this brilliant man from the time he was a little boy. And some exciting things are getting ready to happen with Garr Construction and All Enterprises Garr. We're talking about Muhammad Nassardeen and recycling black dollars, and what are some of your remembrances of Muhammad Nassardeen?
He was very cheerful. He was very up-spirited. Muhammad, he was a good guy, man. He was one thing I do like about him. That, he was always about blacks spending money with blacks.
And who else felt that way?
My grandfather.
I'm telling you. For those of you outside of the local area, Mr. Garr came out here in 1944 with a third grade education, and his pockets had the mumps. And he continued to practice what he had since he was 7 years old, and that is, it's not yours till you
It's
own
paid
it.
for.
That's it,
Ain't
man.
yours till it's paid
It
for,
ain't
baby.
yours. And if you want to make money, you got to make friends.
That's right.
And very quickly, the relationship between Muhammad and your grandfather became intimate, and that's how I got to know your grandfather. The way that I've known him all these many years was through Muhammad. And the thing that he would always tell Muhammad when Muhammad would have events, he would like, Muhammad, you can't find no more sponsors? What's Shell doing over here in Bank of America? Because he would buy a table.
Right.
He figured if you was in the neighborhood, you should be bringing money back to the neighborhood.
That's it,
Right.
man. And that example is one of the things that I wanted to talk about today in terms of how do we turn the corner. It starts with being able to elevate the value of not only black businesses, but black people. Mm-hmm. Because whether we know it or not, that's the biggest fight that we're going to have to wage, is to be treated as equals in our own culture.
First, you said
In our own
first,
culture.
we got to treat ourselves with equals. We got to love ourselves. We got to love each other before anybody else loves us.
And you can't get around that, man.
Can't get around
Can't
that.
get around that. Because one of the things I always appreciated about Mr. Garr's business example was he would not build something that you didn't even want to live in or do business in. And that was one of the reasons he was so successful. You've never heard somebody say, man, I bought a house from Mr. Garr, man, and the foundation is crooked and, the doors don't shut. You never heard that, because he took pride not only in ownership, but in the quality of workmanship. And my question is, how do we close the gap between the models of possibilities, such as a Leon Garr, and this era that we're living in now, where there is a lot of young people with a lot of talent, and some of them have made a lot of money. They didn't necessarily make it in the black community, but how do we close that gap to the point where they have a sense of responsibility, and that we encourage them to be that example and to learn about the people who came before them, the John Johnsons and the what's the sister with the hot comb?
Madam C.J. Walker.
Yeah. I mean, there's been some amazing success stories in our culture, but they've been individual. Mm-hmm. How do we close that gap?
We don't have leaders no more, Bobby. We don't have individuals to take the lead, and that my generation or a generation up under me that follows. Because as of right now, man, it's just like everybody wants to be the boss. And when you get a room full of bosses, you ain't gonna have nothing but trouble.
Amen to that. Speaking of bosses, there was a campaign that we all are familiar with that should have been replicated many, many times over, when your grandfather bought what was at the time Family Savings and Loan Bank. Mm-hmm. Founders Savings and Loan. Mm-hmm. And he bought it and converted it into the largest commercially owned bank west of the Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And Muhammad, because Mr. Garr was such a solid member, and once he found out that Mr. Garr had bought the bank, that inspired him to do his part, which was to let the community know this is back and it's better, because the bank went under with all of the other skullduggery that was going on in the 80s with the savings and loans debacle. The point I wanted to make was Change Bank Day became a phenomenon, and it should have been a model replicated across this country. We hear it every now and then again now that people talk, we need to move our money. Well, first of all, you got to have somewhere to move it to, because we have less black banks now than we've had in my lifetime.
You're right, Bobby. And I'm sorry not to cut you off, but I was sitting over there and I was listening to y'all talking about not to switch subject either, but it goes back to banking, about the NFL. And I was listening to the young lady. He was like, I'm sorry, you're right. You met everybody in my family, and I don't really know who you are either.
I'm Christoph Mitchell. I'm the other co-director. I'm the co-director.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. Okay, that's beautiful.
Carrying on Muhammad's legacy.
That's beautiful. But anyway, in order to hurt some of these NFL owners, which quote unquote, excuse me, y'all, rich white people, and it's like she said, it's the older generation. You got to hurt them in their pockets. So, like she said, if all the black athletes would stop playing, that might not have hurt them, but it would have showed something. To hurt them if they take their money out of their banks and bring it and go black. Now that's how you hurt a rich. Well, Trump, he don't really care. He'll look at you and talk to you, but you want to hurt him, hit him in that wallet. Then he'll stop and listen to you, and then they'll start respecting us. Right now, we're not gonna get no respect until we start respecting ourselves, for number one, and until we make money moves.
And we have to be consistent about, if we're going to protest, then we got to protest with compassion, just like Muhammad, and commitment, right?
Correct.
And
correct.
yeah, you might be sacrificing something, but on the other side of that, what are you going to get? Black Bank Change, Black Bank Day is phenomenal. However, our one truly black bank is One United, and they got all kinds of restrictions as to how you put your money in their bank. And they're kind of arrogant about that.
Well, you have to change that. You're right. I do agree. And that's one thing, because if I can go out and unite all the black athletes, if I bring it back to One United, and I love One United because they took over from founders, there will have to be some changes, some management changes. Right. But if we could put our money together and basically somehow figure out how to use it as one, then our voice will be heard.
Right. But even with Broadway Federal, when Paul Hudson and they didn't have a legacy. It was just him and Karen, right? Mm-hmm. So when it was time for them to step back, there was nobody to help them, and they needed an infusion of cash, and nobody stepped up. They did go public, so even though they're not 100% black-owned like they were, they are a community-based bank. And the other great thing about them is that they're publicly traded. So if you're buying their stock, now you're an owner of that bank, right? And now you have some say-so as to how they reposition your money. Mm-hmm. But we got to think different. But you're absolutely right. We change monies. We change bank. I was absolutely blown away. Wells Fargo has done what they've done, and nobody moved their money. I was blown away with that. What do you mean you didn't move your money to another bank?
I remember very vividly the Change Bank Day and the discussions that came after that. I ain't moving my money. I ain't moving my money.
Well, if you be moved, you got to, us as black people, I hate to say it, but in order for us to do something, we go look for something back. Mm-hmm. So, it's like I look, once again, I hate to say it, One United, y'all got to tighten up just a little bit, but when it was founders, my grandfather had at least 80 to 90% of all the black churches in Los Angeles bringing his bank. Number one, it was customer satisfaction. Number two, it was single families. If you came up in there, he did everything he could to help you make sure that you was a homeowner, make sure as far as to help you get started. We got there to learn once again on how to work together, because we don't, it's like, it's always mine. It's mine, other than ours.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, and I don't care what we're talking about. We happen to be talking about Muhammad. Sure. But when you start talking about changing the mindset of folks in our community, we talk about all the money that we spend.
$1.3 trillion. Yeah. Okay, excuse me for a second. We have someone on the phone. Let's see who's chiming in. I'd asked a couple people to call. Welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
Bobby, it's Hassan.
Oh, my goodness. What a joy. Ladies and gentlemen, most of y'all would know him as Big Red, and that's unfortunate because I've seen this brother perform Shakespeare. He's a graduate of Notre Dame. And more importantly, he's a native of Chicago, Illinois. He's been a friend of mine for so many years. We honored him at Recycling Black Dollars many years ago. And the thing that I love about this brother, his real name is Hawthorne James. Most people know him as Big Red from the Five Heartbeats.
That's my buddy, Big Red. What's up?
Yeah. And true to his spirit, you know him, Gary, from the circle. See, you know, the brothers that still circulate around the city, they know each other that way. And you'll never find him at some Hollywood establishment, you know, dropping $500 to $1,000. He brings that money to the local spots, whether it's eateries or you know, social venue. And I want the people to really know that that's the example that we want to set. So, Hawthorne, thank you, man, for calling in. And your thoughts on Recycling Black Dollars and your recollections of Muhammad Nassardeen.
Well, it's more important now than ever. If we don't get it by now, that we have to take care of ourselves, then we are really, really, truly in trouble. Because it's very apparent that nobody else gives a damn of how we feel, think, or just cares about us, period. So, and Muhammad was preaching this for so many years. He was saying, it's the name, Recycling Black Dollars. Can we support each other? I mean, come on, people, please, get it by now, Bobby. So that's all. That's all I have to say about that, man.
Well, again, man, your example speaks louder than your words because, like I said, this brother has continued to be about the business of promoting excellence in our community and his art form. So what are you working on now, Brother Hawthorne?
Well, I've got a couple months ago I did a film. I was in New York doing a film called Keys, and then I've got 2 TV projects, 2 pilots for series on different platforms. One I did in Houston, one I did in Dallas, and some other things. So, you know, trying to keep my head above water, trying to make $1 or $2, and getting ready to. I'm getting ready to direct the performances for November 4th for the last final edition of the C. Bernard Jackson tribute, which C. Bernard Jackson was the founder of the Inner City Cultural Center, and it's the 50-year anniversary of the founding of that theater. So I'm directing the tribute, which will be at the Nate Holden Theater on November the 4th. So that's what I'm doing right now, and working on the film project, doing the trailer for a film for some friends of mine, Cy Richardson, who is directing. I wrote the film called Posse. What's the name? Directed.
Melvin Van Peebles?
Yeah. Van Peebles. That's his film he directed, but Cy wrote it. So Cy's directing this. Melvin Van Peebles. Going to do down at the what's the theater? Not the theater, but the club down there off of in Leimert Park. The Actresses Club. That's where we're shooting it. I can't think of the actress's name. You know, Bobby, the club down there off of in Leimert Park.
Oh, Division Theater?
Not Division. It's a club behind that.
Regency.
No, Regency West. Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm doing. I'm busy, but
Test tube baby.
So, Hawthorne, now that you done, because you've been spending so much time in Vegas, I thought you had moved over there pretty much. But now that you're back circulating in the city, man, I want you to, sit in on a couple of sessions with me, man, going forward as we begin to, wrap up today's show. Man of your word as always, man, and I appreciate you for that, man. And again, I'd like for you to come and sit in here and just be Hawthorne, man,
Hey, man, I love you. I mean, especially on 5 Heartbeats. That's why whatever you do in L.A., I'm going to make sure, Bobby, make sure that both of us is there, man, so we can represent and show some love to you.
Oh, thank you, bro. I appreciate it. Absolutely, Bobby. I'd love to do that. You know me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I got to, I'm going to get some security around here, though.
Business hours.
Because your office hours is something else.
We ain't got no elevator, but we, you know what I'm saying, we're walking out there on Crenshaw, and that might scare him a little bit.
As great an actor as he is, sometimes he ain't acting.
Down there, Crenshaw, you know, it's like I spent half my life down there.
I'm telling you, man.
I'm crazy because I had to go crazy on my Facebook page, you know, this week because I'm having less and less patience.
Oh boy, I see, I know. So look, man, I'm gonna get you in here and soon, okay, my brother?
All right, Bob.
I appreciate you, man. As I wrap up, if you would pour this, put that picture up, and I'm gonna say a couple of words, and then I'm gonna get final comments from everybody on the platform today. Not that one, Miss Addie Lyons. I got a call this morning early from a brother by the name of Pierre, who I grew up with in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and that lady right there in that picture, she passed away this morning.
Ooh.
And she lived 86 years. So in that regard, I wish I can be that fortunate to turn that many corners, 86 years. But what she meant to me and my community is something that drives me to continue to do these shows about models of possibility and best practice. Her name was Addie Lyons. And her and my mother were best friends. And my mother passed away nearly 20 years ago. And she came to the funeral and she pulled me to the side and she said, "I got you." And that was a tradition in our community back then. There was matriarchs in the community, and she was a mother to so many of us. And even before my mother passed, I could always go to her and talk to her about anything. When I brought Jim Brown's American program to Murfreesboro called The Killing Is Everywhere, she was one of the first people that said, "Bobby, what you need me to do?" And like I said, it's nothing that I couldn't talk to her about. And she was just an amazing woman who raised a wonderful family, and then she went beyond that to just deal with the community in a certain kind of way. And that loving spirit has to be renewed in our community. And I pay homage and tribute to Miss Addie, and may she rest peacefully and be always warmly remembered for having lived a life fully and joyfully without any excuses or regret. So may she rest in peace, Mother Addie Lyons. As I close out tonight, I'm going to go around the table and have a couple parting remarks about what it is we want to do going forward with a concept like recycling black dollars. How best can we practice recycling black dollars as individuals and then merge that into a collective? I'll start with you, brother.
Me?
Yeah, you.
First of all, we got to start spending our money amongst one another. That's the first thing we got to do. But I say that on the other hand, when you spend your money with recycling black dollars, now when I say but recycling black dollars, just recycling with black people, then we got to get what we spend our money for. We got to start respecting each other. Then our money will go a long ways, and the respect will go a long ways, and our love will go a long way. So black people, come on, man, let's tighten up.
In that regard, this brother has got his license as a contractor. He manages many of Mr. Garr's enterprises, and in the very near future, we're going to show him better than tell him.
Absolutely right, man. I want to give you a job. So if you see me on the street, come up here, man. If we got some work, I'm going to make sure you got a job. I want to make sure that you're working. That way that I know that I'm helping you help somebody else.
That's right. Gary?
Wow. First and foremost, let me say thank you, Bobby, for having me here with you today.
It was necessary.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And to talk about recycling black dollars, I know we can go on and on and on about that because there's a lot to say. We as a people, I heard the word love. Love, it resonates to everything that we do. Mm. We also have to represent ourselves in the way we want others to represent themselves in a positive way. Whether you're a broker like myself, like you're a construction man like my brother here, and like Crystal being in the financial services business, we have to truly represent, okay? For those out there that don't know us, okay? not only just walk the walk, we got to talk the talk. We got to be very passionate about it. So whether we're teaching young people, old people, whatever, it helps because that's the start of perhaps getting them interested in finding out what the real deal is down the road.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Go ahead, in 60 seconds, tell me what your thoughts are right now.
Thank you, Bobby, for having me here. As the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, we're carrying on the legacy of Muhammad and combining with my talents and all my colleagues' talents. I think the important thing is doing what we're doing. You have your show, Uncle Bobby's Country Corner. I have the Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert, making sure that we're disseminating information out there to our community that's positive and reinforcing the fact about the love, the connection, the spending our dollars with one another, and putting our people, our own. You got to start at home, right? Mr. Garr knows that. You got to put it at home. Put your own friends on blast. Who are you recycling your dollars with? And make sure that they stand behind what we stand for. Because if we can't change the minds of the people that love us, then how are we going to change the minds of the people that don't even know us?
Great point. My final thoughts is this, real simple. It goes both ways. As a business owner, you got to be more than just in business. You have to be about service. As a consumer, you have to understand that it matters more than your vote, because you actually vote with your dollars every day. And you shouldn't take less from a business owner. And I don't have a problem with asking for the manager, because chances are the manager is not aware, and the owner surely doesn't know that he has hired people that are going to send him to the poorhouse. Mm-hmm. So we have to work both sides of this equation, and here is why it's so important. You can pass on a lot of things in this world, but your job ain't one of them. But a business, you can. And in this country and in this day and age, if we don't consolidate around an economy that flows through us, I don't even want to have that thought go any further than that. Let's take care of our business. Let's take care of each other. And as I close each week, I want to thank everybody in here.
Thank you, Bobby.
That listen to my show for letting me be myself.
Be yourself, Bobby.
Again, OG Portis, appreciate you, sister.
Love you, Portis. We appreciate you.
And we're going to go ahead and just wrap this on up. And may Muhammad rest peacefully, and he's joined by our soldierette, Miss Addie Lyons. May she rest in peace as well. We're done for the night.